Hello. So once again, this is my this "Are You Afraid of the Dark" video is my fourth that I have recorded for the day, and recording is not very complicated for me. I open QuickTime, I open a new recording window, and I press record. I'm not that sophisticated, but I did the fairy tale, which I'll do tomorrow. I did a trailer reaction for the Spider-Man movie because why not? And I did a video that I decided to do last night when I was watching the Are You Afraid of the Dark things, and I will get to why when I get to why. So, Are You Afraid of the Dark? The first story, The Lonely Ghost. We start with a random meeting in the woods between two, and I thought we were in the middle of a story again, which is how the other episode started, but it was just Kristen, I believe, yes, Kristen, just kind of wandering through the woods, looking lost, and I thought I recognized her as Kristen, but then it was just a pre-meeting meeting, and Dave comes along. Dave is another member of the Midnight Society, and he says he didn't want to make a big thing of it, I guess, at the meeting. He says, "Happy birthday." He hands her a present, and which has me wondering, does Dave have a crush on Kristen? Are the characters, I mean, is this a start of an arc for the Midnight Society characters who don't get the bulk of the attention, focus in these episodes? So that's interesting. She doesn't open it. She says she'll open it after the meeting, but still. So Dave is also the storyteller. I'm going to try to start learning their names. Gary, Kristen, Dave, I know. And Frank, if I recognize him, he's the new one. Mm-hmm. So the story is about Amanda, a girl whose, I guess, scientist parents have to go off and do scientist things, leaving her with her aunt Dottie and cousin Beth at a nice old house in the woods next to another nice old house in the woods that is for sale. But the for sale sign keeps falling down, and it has been for sale apparently for a very long time. Even though they are cousins, they have an older sister, younger sister dynamic, similar to the older brother, younger brother dynamic from the Phantom Cab. The older one, very obnoxious, doesn't want anything to do with the younger one, and wants to make the younger one prove her worth. There's also a nanny character who lives in the house, doesn't do much, is very old. She's Beth's nanny, but Beth hates her because she's too old to have a nanny, calls her disgusting, is very, very cruel to this older woman, but her mother won't fire her because she has, her mother says nanny has nowhere to go. But Amanda, she's an amiable girl. She wants to try to get along. She says, well, just introduce me to your friends and we can do things, and we can all maybe get along, or you don't have to pay attention to me, one of them will. And so Beth brings up, you have to be initiated by staying in the haunted house next door. That's the house that's for sale. And she says all of her friends did it, and she's got to spend, so Amanda has to spend the night in the haunted house next door. Before she does this, of course, she has to learn the tale, why the house is haunted. And I didn't catch everything, but it seems to be there's a little girl. She was supposed to go somewhere where she could be taken care of because the war had made her an orphan, I think. I think this is World War II they're talking about. But she gets only so far before she comes to a group of bullies who chase her back to her house where there's no one to take care of her and lock her in her bedroom, and then she dies there. No one is able to get to her or take care of her until, or no, her parents aren't dead because then they come back. I guess it's kind of like Amanda, where they have to go off and do a job. So no one's there in the house, and she dies in her room alone. Very dark for a children's television show, but it is Are You Afraid of the Dark? So let's see. The house doesn't want to be sold. Aunt Dottie is a realtor trying to sell the house, and the for sale sign keeps coming down. So one of her first lines is this house doesn't want to be sold. So as Amanda goes into the house, Beth reveals, giggling with the other girls, that none of them actually stayed in it, and that they're just hazing her. They don't use the word hazing, but that's what it is. So Amanda goes into the house. She looks around. She hears noises, and she says, very funny, to presumably Beth or the other girls. She thinks that they're trying to scare her. And then she goes into the, I guess was the little girl's bedroom, and she sees something in the mirror. There's a closet mirror, and she sees something, and she turns around, and "Help me" has been written in the mirror backwards. Or has been written backwards on the wall, so that in the mirror it presents as "Help me." And then she looks back at the mirror, and at this point I sang a line from the Phantom of the Opera to the malevolent supernatural force I live with, "Look at your face in the mirror," because it's just like, it's probably the same effect too, the same stagecraft. It looks exactly like how the Phantom reveals his physical form to Christine in the musical. The light comes on in the special light box behind the mirror, and the Phantom is visible through the mirror, and that's how this girl's ghost appears in the mirror, the little girl's ghost. And it's a very creepy little girl ghost. And I wrote down that Gary looks like Egon. Not something I would have noticed in the early 90s because I hadn't seen the Ghostbusters movies, but especially with the new Ghostbusters movie on the horizon, I noticed Gary looks like young Egon. Amanda flees, and then Dottie goes into the house for some reason, probably just checking it out as, I guess, the real estate agent in charge of the house, and she sees "Help me" written all over the walls of that room now, and sends Amanda and Beth to clean it because she says it must have been one of them. And so they go, and before they even start cleaning, though, the mirror turns transparent again, but this time on the other side is a nice bedroom filled with stuffed animals. And we've earlier had established that Beth loves stuffed animals, and that Amanda is in charge of cleaning up her stuffed animals. But Beth goes through the mirror, through the looking glass, as it were, and this enables the ghost of the little girl to come out. And she approaches Amanda slowly. The door closes on its own. Amanda can't get out. And what the little girl wants is to give a locket to Amanda. And Amanda recognizes it because she has seen a similar locket around Nanny's neck. She's been nice to Nanny this whole time, despite Beth's behavior, because she's a good little girl. So she runs back. Nanny is about to leave because Nanny feels bad about Beth hates her and she doesn't want to be a burden, so she's chosen this moment to leave. But before she can get in the cab, Amanda runs up to her, shows her the necklace, and then convinces her to come to the house where the little girl is waiting. It is revealed that they are, I guess, mother and daughter, and the ghost takes Nanny through the mirror, which should enable Beth to come back out, but she doesn't. And then the mirror kind of seals itself, and we hear Beth calling from inside, but Amanda realizes she's inside the closet now, not the mirror. But Beth doesn't realize this. So before Amanda lets her out, she makes her promise to be nicer and to be nicer to her friends instead of being a queen bee or whatever. And then Amanda lets her out. So, and then at the end of the story, Kristen opens the present, and it turns out to be a locket. So, tied in. Good episode. Very creepy little girl ghost. And kind of starting something with Dave and Kristen. The Midnight Society, they're getting characters, they're getting their arcs. I don't remember any of them having a particular character. I remember Gary as the leader, and perhaps because he looks like Egon, and subconsciously when I finally saw a Ghostbusters movie, I thought, oh, Egon looks like the kid from the Midnight Society. So the next one The Twisted Claw. And here's why I recorded 4 videos today, because The Twisted Claw is loosely based on The Monkey's Paw, which is a story by, oh, and I've made it go away, hold on a second, The Monkey's Paw, W.W. Jacobs, and I have that information courtesy of Project Gutenberg. I have gone to I looked it up yesterday because I'm curious about these things. It's like during Wishbone, I read a couple of short stories, epic poem type things, before seeing the episodes, because the whole theme was I've read the story before seeing the episode. In this case, I didn't, but I read it afterwards. I read it before making this video, and I will put it on one of the little boxes that appears at the end of the video if you want to then go and check this out. It will also, that link should have a link to Project Gutenberg if you'd rather read it than listening to me say it, but I'd rather you listen to me perform it. But it's up to you. So anyway, it's an interesting story. It's pretty much beat for beat the episode that I'm about to describe. But you know, that's what the show was. It took familiar properties and it put its own twist on them, and that's what the Twisted Claw is. So, as I mentioned before, this episode starts in the middle of a story, but the story doesn't have an end, which is another weird new thing that they do. The meeting was called by a kid whose name I did not catch. I believe he's the blonde kid, and he just says, "Well, I don't have an ending for the story." Apparently, he called the meeting, so they call meetings when they have stories. I guess they take turns, but only actually call a meeting when they actually have a story, so that they don't waste their time. But it wasn't a full story, so it kind of led me to think, well, is this a writer's circle? Are they workshopping things? But so that's just another element potentially to look for more of in the Midnight Society. But then David pops up. He says he has a story, and one of the other characters, possibly Kristen, says, "David, you haven't told a story in a long time." But he did. The other episode, the one right before this one, that was his story. So maybe either we're not seeing every single meeting of the Midnight Society, but then what would be the point? Or more likely, the episodes, like Magic School Bus, were written not necessarily to follow logically one to the other. But it's just a weird little fluke. The idea that he has 2 stories in a row, but they have the line in the latter story, "You haven't told the story in a long time." So this story starts on Mischief Night, the night before Halloween, which I never participated in. But that's when people toss toilet paper in trees and light bags on fire on porches, and apparently spray shaving cream in old women's faces, because what are their names? Their names are Doug, Dougie, and Kevin. They knock on the door of a woman who is reportedly, or apparently, her reputation is that she's a witch. She's an old woman who lives alone, so of course she's a witch. And they knock on her door, and then they spray shaving cream. It looks like they're going for the window, but then why did they knock on her door or ring her doorbell? Because she opens the door and she gets shaving cream all over her face. She stumbles backwards, she breaks a vase, and they run away because they don't want to get in trouble. And then when she regains her composure, she walks towards the door, she looks out, she can't see them, but she starts to cackle, because she will have her revenge, I suppose. So then on Halloween, when they are dressed up, they go back to her house because they want to be seen as the only ones brave enough to go back to her house on Halloween. They say she won't recognize us. She had cream all over her face, shaving cream, and in her eyes, over her glasses, so they don't think they'll be recognized. But they take their masks off in her house anyway, because they knock on the door. She does not have any candy for them, but what she offers them from a music box is a wooden vulture claw that grants 3 wishes, because I guess it would have been too much for her to hand children a mummified piece of an animal, which is what the monkey's paw is. So good idea. Make it wooden, but then why carve a vulture's claw out of wood? Well, to make it grant wishes. And it is in a music box. Let's see. One of the kids believes it more than the other, because they and says it's just a piece of old junky wood like your head, and that was the line that reminded me that I had seen this episode. It's weird, the little things that remind me, and then there's a moment later in the episode that reminded me also, but just, there are so many things that I watched as a kid, and I don't know, that I know that I watched some Are You Afraid of the Dark? I don't think I saw The Lonely Ghost. I definitely saw The Frozen Ghost. But it's just weird, the things that make you remember, oh yes, this is familiar to me, and then a lot more of it looks familiar. Dougie, I believe, is the one who wishes that they could just go home and finish trick-or-treating because they were weirded out, I guess, by the old woman in the vulture's claw. And so a couple of bullies start to chase them, and their wish is granted. The bullies steal some candy, and they go home because they want to be off the street away from the bullies. The next day at school, Kevin wishes, again, still not quite believing that the bullies chasing them was more than a coincidence, he wishes to win the race in gym, but he's not the fastest kid in the class. So Dougie, watching the race for some reason instead of participating, or maybe this is a athletic meet, teams from different schools, I don't know, but Dougie is watching as Kevin is running. Kevin is the second fastest kid. The fastest kid, a dog appears out of nowhere, runs across the fastest kid's path, and he falls and seems to break his leg. And Kevin jumps over him and wins the race. So, yes, that is what happens. So, presumably, as opposed to in The Monkey's Paw, where only one character actually makes wishes, and the other characters say, you have to make the wish, in this one, they alternate making wishes, and supposedly they each have 3, and they're working out, what are we going to do with this thing? Once again, the parents are not home, just like at the end of so many of these episodes. And I guess Dougie says that, we'll wait for my folks, they'll know what to do. And Kevin, holding the claw and getting fed up with Dougie's wishy-washiness, says, I wish you'd lose your folks. And so then they get a phone call that his parents were in a bad accident, and he slams the phone down before it can be finished, so it's not confirmed that is that they died, but he, or maybe it is, and he slams the phone down, but he rips it out of the wall and throws it on the floor, because phones used to have to be ripped out of the wall, and throwing them on the floor used to be not the worst thing that could happen to them. But anyway, once again, a wish is made in haste. Dougie, not thinking, holding the claw, says, I wish Gramps were alive, he'd know what to do. So then they realize his dead grandfather is going to come to the door. And they see his grandfather's car pull up. They hear him walking up the stairs, and they both reach for the claw to make the wish that they think they need to make. I forget what Kevin's wish is, but Dougie, I believe, is the one who makes the necessary wish, which is that they had never broken the vase. Because if they never break the vase, they never are given the claw, none of this stuff happens. And so, the doorbell ringing, the Gramps coming up to the door, that was the other moment that I thought reminded me of the episode. So the very last, the parents are all right, and the very last thing is that a note is delivered, and it is the vase, intact, from the witch presumably, and a note in an envelope that just says trick or treat. So that's that for those episodes and my impressions of them. Let me just quickly look at the next 2. The Tale of the Hungry Hounds. Don't recognize the title. Tale of the Super Specs, I think I recognize this one. It looks like it's the first appearance of Sardo, which is a character I think who is in more than one episode. So that should be fun. I will watch those and report back. Thank you for watching this. And then again, one of these boxes will take you to my version, my interpretation, my performance of The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs, inspiration for the Twisted Claw episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Have a nice whatever time of day it is.